My father said, "Your brother quit and you'll have to support him, it's that simple," so I told him. My father said, "Your brother quit and you'll have to support him. It's that simple." All while my brother laughed. So I told him, "No, Dad. He's your son and your problem. I'm out of here," and I cut them off completely. My name is Jorge, I'm 34 years old, and I'm a dentist. It's not that I love to brag about my work, but let's just say I'm doing well. I studied hard, I put in the effort, and now I have a dental clinic that's doing wonderfully. I can't complain, really. I make good money. I live in a decent apartment in the city center, and although I don't have extravagant luxuries, I treat myself from time to time. But if there's one thing that has weighed on me more than anything else in life, it's my family. Or, rather, the duty they imposed on me for being the son who turned out well. It all started a few years ago when my parents, Rosa and Victor, decided they didn't want to work anymore. My dad was 62 and my mom was 60. And although they weren't that old, they both insisted they were too tired to keep going. Dad had worked as a firefighter his whole life, and Mom had been a housewife, with the occasional sporadic job as a seamstress. It's not like they had saved much, and Dad's pension was barely enough to cover the basics. So one day, sitting in their living room, they dropped the bomb on me. "Jorge, you're the man of the house now," my dad said with that authoritarian tone he always used, as if he were giving an order. "Your mother and I can't handle it all anymore, and someone has to take care of the family." I looked at them, a bit confused. I was sitting on the old armchair in the living room, the one that creaked every time someone moved. My brother Alvaro, who was 30 at the time, was sprawled on the other sofa, staring at his phone and laughing at something that probably wasn't funny at all. He always did that, laughing as if the world owed him something. "Take care of things?" I asked, frowning. "What do you mean, Dad?" "The bills, Jorge," my mom chimed in with that sweet voice she used when she wanted to convince me of something. "The house, the electricity, the water, the groceries, all of that. You have a good job, son. You're a dentist, you make good money. We've done our part, now it's your turn." I fell silent, processing what they were telling me. It wasn't that I didn't want to help. I've always believed that families should stick together, that we have to support each other. But something in their tone, in the way they said it, made it feel less like a request and more like an obligation. As if, because I was the older son and the one who had succeeded, I had to carry the entire burden. "And Alvaro?" I asked, looking at my brother, who was still glued to his phone as if the conversation had nothing to do with him. "He can help too, can't he? He works at the clothing store. He must earn something." Alvaro looked up with that mocking smile that always got on my nerves. "Me?" he said, laughing. "Bro, I make peanuts selling t-shirts. You're the one with the money, the star dentist. Don't drag me into this." My dad backed him up immediately, as he always did. "Alvaro is just starting out, Jorge. Don't be selfish. He can't handle that kind of responsibility. You, on the other hand, have a profession. It's only fair." Fair. That word stuck with me, though not in the way they intended. Fair. Fair for whom? But I didn't say anything. I nodded like I always did because deep down, I wanted my parents to be okay. I wanted them to have a comfortable life, to not lack for anything. So I agreed. I started paying the house bills, the rent, electricity, water, internet, groceries, everything. Every month, I transferred a considerable amount of my salary to my parents' account. And even though I didn't have much left over after that, I told myself it was my duty. It was my family. After all, the first few months weren't so bad. My parents seemed grateful, although they never said it directly. Mom would sometimes give me a hug and say things like, "You're a good son, Jorge." But there was always a hint of expectation in her voice, as if she took it for granted that I would keep paying for everything without complaining. Dad, on the other hand, was more direct. If I was ever late with a transfer, he would call me immediately with that scolding tone he'd used since I was a child. "Jorge, what happened with the rent money?" he'd say, without even a hello. The landlord is already asking me about it. Don't make us look bad. I would apologize, even though I had no reason to. I always paid, I always followed through. But little by little, things started to change. My parents began asking for more. First, it was a new TV because the old one didn't work anymore. Then a new refrigerator because the one we have makes too much noise. Then new living room furniture because the neighbors have nicer ones. I tried to tell them it wasn't necessary, that those things could wait, but they always had an excuse. Jorge, we gave you everything when you were little, my mom would say with that victim look she knew how to use to manipulate me. Don't you want us to live well now that we're old? And like a fool, I gave in. Because I wanted them to be happy, because I wanted to feel like I was doing something good for them. But every time I went to their house, I felt that something wasn't right. There was a tension in the air, a sort of distance. My parents didn't treat me with the same affection they showed Alvaro. They pampered him, celebrated him for the smallest things. If Alvaro came home with a new shirt, my mom would shower him with praise. You look so handsome, son. That shirt looks incredible on you. If I showed up with something new, they barely looked at me. Once, I bought myself a nice watch, nothing extravagant, but something I was excited about. My dad saw it and just said, "Good to see you have extra money for things like that, Jorge. Don't forget about the rent." Alvaro, meanwhile, was the king of the house. He worked at a clothing store in the mall. He earned little, but was always showing off what he bought with his money, even though he asked to borrow from me more than once to pay his debts. I would give it to him because he was my brother, because I believed that one day he would also do his part. But Alvaro had no intention of changing. He was always with his girlfriend, a girl named Carla, who seemed more interested in their outings to bars than in building anything serious. Alvaro lived in a small apartment, but he was almost always at my parents' house, eating their food, using their internet, without contributing a thing. And then there were the taunts. At first, they were small comments, things I could ignore, but over time they became crueler. It all started because I didn't have a partner. I've never been one to desperately search for a relationship, and with my work, I barely had time to go out. But for my parents and Alvaro, that was a reason to laugh. "And you, Jorge, when are you going to get a girlfriend?" my dad would say with a sarcastic chuckle while we ate at their house. "You're getting old, man. Don't end up alone." "Leave him alone, Dad," Alvaro would intervene with that smug smile I hated so much. "Jorge is married to his clinic, right, bro? Working like a slave all day." Mom would laugh as if it were the funniest joke in the world. I tried to take it in stride, to smile and change the subject, but each comment was like a small stone piling up in my chest. I didn't understand why they treated me like this. I was the one paying for everything, the one making sure they didn't lack anything, and yet it seemed they didn't love me as much as they loved Alvaro. He was the favorite, the spoiled son, the one who always came out on top, even though he did nothing. Months passed and things only got worse. My parents kept asking for more money, and Alvaro also started asking for loans that he never paid back. Once, he asked me for $500 to pay off a credit card debt. Another time, he asked for $300 to buy a gift for Carla. I gave it to him, even though I felt more and more used each time, but I kept telling myself that this was my family, that I had to help them, that this is what good sons do. Until I met Valeria. Valeria walked into my clinic one day, just like any other patient. She was an entrepreneur, the owner of a chain of coffee shops that were growing like wildfire in the city. She was 32, with long brown hair, green eyes that seemed to see right through you, and a smile that could light up a room. But it wasn't just her beauty that caught my attention. It was her energy, her confidence, the way she spoke about her work with passion. She came in for a dental checkup, but we ended up talking for an hour about coffee, books, and even the trips we both dreamed of taking. "I've never met such an interesting dentist," she said, laughing, as she got up from the chair after the consultation. "And I've never had a patient who gave me so much to talk about," I replied, feeling my cheeks turn red. We exchanged numbers, and what started as a few casual texts turned into dates, dinners, walks through the city. Valeria was everything I didn't know I needed. Smart, funny, independent. She didn't need anyone to support her, and I liked that. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone saw me for who I was, not for what I could give. A few months later, I asked her to be my girlfriend, and she said yes. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. I finally felt like things were falling into place. And when I proposed to her in a restaurant with a view of the sea, she cried, hugged me, and said yes without hesitation. I was on top of the world. But then I thought about my parents and Alvaro. I thought about all the mockery, the comments about my bachelor life, how they made me feel like less for not having a partner. And I decided it was time to shut them up. I told my parents I wanted to introduce them to someone important. I organized a dinner at their house and brought Valeria. When we walked in, I couldn't help but smile at their faces. My mom's jaw dropped. Dad blinked as if he couldn't believe it, and Alvaro, who happened to be there with Carla, dropped the fork he was holding. Valeria was radiant, in an elegant but simple dress, her hair down, and that smile that could disarm anyone. She looked like she had stepped out of a magazine, but the best part was that she didn't need to show off. Her mere presence spoke for itself. "This is Valeria, my fiancée," I said, with a pride I couldn't hide. "Fiancée?" my mom said, nearly choking on the water she was drinking. "You're getting married?" "That's right," I replied, squeezing Valeria's hand. "We got engaged last week." Valeria smiled and greeted them with that warmth that made her so special, but my family's reaction was not what I expected. Instead of congratulating me, of being happy for me, I saw something in their eyes that I didn't like. Envy. Mom and Dad exchanged glances as if they didn't know what to say. Alvaro, for his part, let out a nervous laugh and looked at Carla, who seemed uncomfortable. No one said anything bad, but there was no enthusiasm either. It was as if my happiness bothered them. The dinner was tense. Valeria tried to be friendly, to talk about her work, to ask questions about my family, but my parents responded with one-word answers and Alvaro barely spoke. When we left, Valeria said to me, "I don't think they like me, Jorge." "Don't worry," I told her, though inside I was furious. "They're just like that. But you're perfect." And she was. But that night, as I drove home, I felt something break inside me. I had brought Valeria with the hope that my family would see me in a new light, that they would finally recognize my worth, that I wasn't just the guy who paid their bills. But instead, they treated me with indifference, as if my happiness didn't matter. And then, an idea began to germinate in my mind. Maybe I was tired of being the good son. A few weeks later, I got a call from my dad. His voice sounded serious, almost angry. "Jorge, come to the house. Now. We need to talk about something important." "What happened?" I asked, worried. "Are you okay?" "Just come," he said, and hung up. I got nervous. I thought maybe someone was sick or something serious had happened, so I canceled my afternoon appointments and drove to my parents' house. When I arrived, they were in the living room, Dad sitting in his favorite armchair, with that boss-like expression he used so often, and Alvaro on the sofa with a smirk I didn't like at all. There was no sign of Mom, which I found strange. "What's going on?" I asked, sitting down across from them. Dad didn't waste any time. He got straight to the point with a tone that allowed no argument. "Jorge, you're making a lot of money. You're lucky, you're doing well. You have a partner now, everything is going perfectly for you. But family comes first, and you have to help more." I frowned, confused. "Help more?" "Dad, I pay all your bills. The rent, the electricity, the water, the groceries. What more do you want?" Dad took a deep breath, as if holding back his anger. "Your brother quit his job," he said, pointing to Alvaro, who was still smiling as if this were all a joke. "He didn't like it, it stressed him out. So from now on, you're going to support him. It's that simple. No discussion." I was frozen. I looked at Alvaro, who said nothing, just chuckled under his breath as if he were enjoying the moment. Then I looked at my dad, hoping this was some kind of joke, but his face was stone cold. "What?" I said, feeling rage begin to well up in my chest. "Alvaro quit. And why do I have to support him? He's young, he can work. Tell him to find another job. He's your brother." Dad yelled, slamming his hand on the arm of the chair. "Family helps family, Jorge. Alvaro is going through a tough time. He's stressed out. He can't work right now. You, on the other hand, have everything. You have to share." "Share?" I repeated, incredulous. "And what has Alvaro ever shared with me? Or you? All this time I've paid for everything, I've given everything, and all I get in return is mockery. Do you think I don't notice? Do you think I don't see how you treat him like a prince and me like your personal bank?" Dad's face turned red, but not with shame, with fury. "Don't you dare talk to us like that," he shouted. "We raised you, we gave you everything. This is what you do for your family." And then, something inside me snapped. I looked at Alvaro, who was still laughing as if this had nothing to do with him. I looked at my dad with his face of an implacable judge, and I had had enough. "No, Dad," I said, with a calmness that surprised even me. "Alvaro is your son, and that makes him your problem. I'm out of here. And by the way, I'm done paying your bills too. It's over. I'm not your bank or your slave. You're on your own." The silence that followed was deafening. Dad opened his mouth, but no words came out. Alvaro stopped laughing, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of worry on his face. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked to the door. As I was leaving, I heard my dad yell, "Jorge, get back here. You can't do this to us." But I didn't stop. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. The following days were a whirlwind, but a good one. Valeria and I dove into planning the wedding. She wanted something simple but elegant at a venue with a sea view. I just wanted to marry her as soon as possible. We picked a date, 3 months away. While we were organizing everything, my family remained silent. Not a call, not a text. I thought they were angry, or maybe waiting for me to give in like I always did, but this time, I didn't. A week before the wedding, my mom called. Her voice sounded desperate. "Jorge, the landlord is pressuring us," she said, almost crying. "We haven't paid the rent. We need your help." I was quiet for a second, feeling the anger rise. That was it. Money. Not an apology. Not a, "How are you?" Nothing. "No, Mom," I replied in a cold tone I barely recognized. "I'm not paying for anything anymore. Dad has his pension. Alvaro can work. Figure it out." "Son, please," she begged. "We're your parents. You can't leave us like this." "I'm not leaving you," I said, gripping the phone. "You used me. It's over." I hung up before she could say anything else. My heart was beating fast, but it wasn't guilt, it was relief. For the first time, I felt in control. Then, a week later, we got married in a dream wedding, and then we left for our honeymoon. The honeymoon was on a Caribbean beach, sun, sea, cocktails, and endless nights talking with Valeria. It was paradise. But even there, my family tried to reach me. On the third day, I received an audio message from Alvaro. His voice was breaking. "Jorge, bro, please. I had to move in with Mom and Dad. And now the landlord is going to evict us. Mom and Dad are desperate. We have no one else. Help us, I'm begging you." Valeria, who was next to me, took the phone from my hand before I could reply. "Don't write back to them," she said seriously. "Don't let them drag you back in." She was right, but I couldn't resist closing that chapter once and for all. I wrote a short message, "Not my problem. Get a job." I blocked their numbers and tossed the phone aside. Valeria hugged me, and for the first time in years, I breathed easy. Back in the city, Valeria and I started a new life. We bought an apartment together, one with a balcony that overlooked the city. The clinic was still doing well, and now I was working for us, not to support others. Valeria was expanding her coffee shops, and together we dreamed of traveling, having kids, building something of our own. A month later, I heard from a family friend that my parents had been evicted. Without my money, they couldn't pay the rent. They moved to a small, old place, living off my dad's pension and whatever little my mom earned selling food. Alvaro, for his part, sunk on his own. Quitting his job was his mistake. He lost his apartment, and Carla, his girlfriend, left him because he wasn't man enough. He tried to contact me a few more times, but I didn't answer. I had nothing to say to him. Sometimes, I think about them. I'm not going to lie, a part of me wonders if they're okay. But then I remember the taunts, how they treated me like a bank, how they never valued what I did for them. And that little bit of guilt vanishes. Now, sitting on my balcony with Valeria, looking at the city lights, I feel something I never thought possible. Peace. I don't need their approval. I don't need to be the good son. I just need to be Jorge, the man who stood up for himself, set boundaries, and chose his own happiness. And that, believe me, feels very good. Subscribe for more daily stories.